One of the phrases that I love from that is they talk about it being expertise on demand. And, you think about a team like, this is a common situation I see where they know that they want to change things. Sometimes they know how to do that, but they need more capacity. So, it's like, who can we bring in that's trusted, that can help guide us through this, and, increase our speed of execution of this change.
I'm Larry Cornett, and this is Invincible Solopreneurs. So welcome to the show, DJ. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, great to be on here. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks
it's
for
been
having
a
me.
while. So folks listening may not know, but David and I overlapped at eBay for about 4 years. And he was in product, I was in design, and I worked on some of the same projects. I remember
Yeah.
when one of the PMs went on jury duty. And you're like, hey, dude, this was a pivotal moment in my career. You probably don't even remember it, but I remember you came to me and you said, hey, she's going to be on jury duty. Can you take over kind of the product management stuff too? Writing the spec and working with the engineers. I'm like, sure, okay. And that was a moment in my career that kind of put that bug in my ear. And later I got into product, and I think it was really, I can thank you for that. It was kind of
You can thank the
incredible.
jury system for that.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
I know this probably isn't the focus of our talk, but that is one of the examples that, when you have a high performing team, people can flex between roles and you don't have to
Yeah.
explain. And, you know, you being in design, you step right in and, in my head, I pictured you as a great product person in
Oh,
general, not
well,
just
I
a designer.
appreciate that. Yeah.
And so, I think, that's a theme of mine in terms of working with teams is, helping them to have that cross functional collaboration
Oh,
and
I love that. Yeah.
so.
It's so important. I think we get stuck in our heads, and we'll talk about this if we have time later, but we grew up, especially me, I'm Gen X, and boomers definitely did, where it's
Mhm.
like you have a profession, it's very narrow. And boomers, it was like you have one employer the rest of your life. At least, with us, we had multiple employers, but it's like you got a profession and you stay in your lane and you climb the ladder and you get to the top. And
Yeah.
I think the people I see succeeding now as the world is shifting under our feet are the ones that are like, I do certain things that end up shipping a product or working with customers or whatever it might be. Job title kind of comes and goes, but
Mhm.
especially at a startup, I'm going to wear all the hats. It's like that's just the way it is. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah, I think that's true, but a lot of times startups grow and then they forget about that stuff, even though that
Yeah.
was so successful when they were
Yeah.
little. And you have big teams that can do that too, and it still makes the team more effective.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good attitude to keep throughout your career, no matter what kind of
Yeah.
stage or company or function or industry you're in. It's a team sport. You can't produce anything by yourself. Yes, you
Right.
can,
Yeah.
but usually the best results come from collaboration.
Yeah. Totally. And I'll share more in the show notes, but if you don't know David, his path has been pretty impressive. So he was product manager, and that's when we were at eBay, and then he became a general manager. He was a product executive. He had a lot of C-level roles. Now he's founded his own company called Crescendo Product Group that provides coaching, fractional leadership, and that's an interesting one. It's funny. I was just talking with Han Nguyen about this,
Mhm.
which is this whole concept of fractional leadership and fractional executives. Um, and I talk about this sometimes with clients who are interested in that, but sometimes with the people I'm coaching who are thinking about what's my second act or third act career. And I mention fractional roles, and they're like, what is that? So maybe you could define for the audience listening how you think about fractional leadership for your clients.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Ha because she and Deb Liu, also from eBay days, wrote a
Right.
blog about this. And one of the phrases that I love from that is they talk about it being expertise on demand.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you think about a team like, this is a common situation I see where uh, they know that they want to change things. Sometimes they know how to do that, but they need
Right.
more capacity. So, it's like who can we bring in that's trusted, that can help guide us through this, and increase our speed of execution of this change.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes they know that they have gaps. And the gap
Yeah.
can be like, hey, we know what good looks like, but we don't know how to do change management to get there. Or
Sure.
it could be, we read about this in a book and this all sounds great, but how do you do all these things? And what are all the details and the nuances? And, how do you get the team on board with this stuff? So, um, a lot of times it is just saying, hey, I need some help. I don't necessarily need a full-time permanent role, but there is a period where we want to boost our capabilities by bringing in someone to help us just do things better.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. How do you think about it differently? Because I've done some fractional and I've also done what I call interim.
Mhm.
I don't know if you think of those two as different. I mean, there is a subtle difference, I think, between interim and fractional.
Yeah, I think there's probably a continuum between them where they each have
Sure.
elements of each other. Um, when I think about interim, first of all, that may be full time.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
sometimes you're coming in as like you are doing the job, you are executing, and you do all the things, tactics and budgeting and performance evaluation.
Yeah.
Change management might be part of that, or improving the team is always part of a leader's job. But your primary responsibility may be to immediate deliverables and achieving goals.
Hmm.
In my experience, when people bring in me for fractional help, mostly what they're looking at is helping improve how they approach things. And
Oh,
so
interesting.
I
Okay.
tend to focus most of my time on helping teach them principles and then helping them apply those principles in a way that works for them.
Hmm.
Um, so I do get into the execution of things, but it tends to be a little bit more like, hey, we're going to use this next project as an example where we can pilot this thing and show how we can do things in a different way that hopefully yields better results,
Yeah.
et cetera.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that, there's the product operations side of things versus the product execution side of things. Most of my fractional engagements, people have come to me more interested in the operations side of things, like
Hmm.
how do you change how you do things? Obviously, they are connected. There's a reason
Yeah.
you do things a certain way, is
Right.
you want to deliver stuff, and you want that stuff to be valuable and with measurable outcomes and things like that. But um, yeah, I look at it more as fractional as I'm teaching them to fish versus I'm doing the job for an interim period.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of ran into that with some of the product consulting I was doing, is that they didn't feel as comfortable outsourcing kind of the strategy and vision because they're like,
Yeah,
we should own that.
yeah,
But what they did want is help with operational stuff and process improvements, hiring people, building the team. Like, how should we structure the team? What's our next
mhm,
hire? What should we do about that? How do we
yeah,
fix the way we're working with engineering and design? It seems kind of broken and
mhm,
people are angry all the time. How do we fix that stuff? But yeah, the strategy and vision and is like the executives were really wary of having an outsider drive that. It was going to walk
yeah.
away someday.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the issues sometimes with bringing in a management consulting firm
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
you've got extremely smart people, and I will admit McKinsey would probably be better at doing strategic analysis than I am. But then there's the follow through, like the team ultimately needs to own that, and they need to be
Yeah.
on the hook
Yeah.
for the results. Um, so on the one hand, every company has different needs, and so I can't just come in with my playbook and I say, okay, here's week one, here's week
Right.
two, and we are sticking to this, and we are on
Yeah.
schedule, or we're behind because someone canceled this meeting or whatever. A lot of it comes down to listening to them and assessing what their needs are and what's the right approach for them. Um, Back to the vision and strategy stuff, a lot of where someone like me can help is sometimes they just don't know how to approach that exercise.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm probably not the best person to tell them what their vision should be or what their strategy should be,
Yeah.
but I might be able to help them say, look, here's a framework, or here's some questions we can work through together, some exercises. Um, you know, I've seen enough that I can help assess, like, is this vision or strategy clear enough that it's actionable?
Right.
Is it
Yeah.
is it
Yeah.
bold? Is it clear? You know, is it differentiated, or are they just copying someone else? You know, like I've seen
Right.
stuff where someone shows me their strategy, and you look at this and say, could their competitor say the exact same statement? Or even
Right.
a company in a different industry says the same statement. Like, you know, so often you hear, you know, I want to have the right product at the right time for the right customer. And it's like, okay, no one's going to argue that you should have the wrong customer or wrong
Right.
product. But what do those things mean? And so, you know, sometimes
Yeah.
it's just you know, you have the outside perspective to say, like, okay, you know, based on some criteria, how can you make this better for your team? And,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, can you help them clarify it in a way that translates it later into product plans? You know, so again, not telling them you have the wrong strategy as a business, but saying like,
Mhm.
hey, you know, given what you're trying to achieve, can you frame it in a way that will be more useful?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's interesting. I look back on my 20 plus years or whatever in the corporate world and now continuing coaching beyond that. There was some really great stuff going on with product eBay. That was I learned so much from and I look at a lot of the companies after that. I'm like, they didn't quite have it figured out. And just how buttoned up and rigorous and metrics driven and goal driven, trying to figure out the outcomes. And I took that with me. I remember getting getting yelled at in the meeting, like, "Oh, you eBay people!
Yeah.
You always want to figure out what metrics we're driving and what the call to action is and what we're trying." It's like, yeah, why wouldn't you want to figure that
Don't you
stuff
want to
out?
know? Yeah. Exactly. But, you know, I think even at eBay, there was an evolution. I mean, you know, one of the things that I love about my eBay years was just we had such, I guess they call it talent density right now. We had such high talent density,
Sure. Yeah.
lots of
Yeah.
great people. I mean, partially because the dot-com bubble had burst. And so eBay was like one of the few companies that was doing well in that era. We were actually
Yeah.
profitable. Everyone else was going
Yeah.
out of business. So for a while, we were attracting some of the best people. Um, but we didn't have it all figured out either. And there was stuff like, you know, agile was just kind of becoming a thing.
Mhm. Right.
And, you know, there was a lot of it where I think we were learning as a group what's the best way. So that's part of what was really fun for me about that. And partially it's just fun
Sure.
working with smart people on big problems and those kind of things. But yeah, it is interesting to look back and see how the industry practices and what's considered quote a best practice has evolved over
Right.
that time. And there's still a
Yeah.
lot of companies that are struggling to catch up, or they take the headline, but they're missing the nuances or the even the spirit of the thing.
Right.
You know, we could have a whole separate podcast just about agile and implementations of that. But
Yes.
you know, it's just interesting to see how that's come along. And yeah, I mean, I do look back on the eBay days as really uh, fun and exciting and impactful and all those things. You know, for
Yeah.
a lot of reasons, but that's part of it.
Such a great network too.
Mhm.
And I was talking about this with Ha. I talk with a lot of people that, your network and your relationships, you're gonna find is probably your most powerful asset in your career.
Yeah,
And it's so much about the people you know and keeping those relationships fresh and adding more good people to your network, which requires those of us who are more introverted to kind of get out of our shell and meet people and do
yeah.
that kind of stuff. As you look, and I've seen your career in bits and pieces, you've had some entirely new kind of groups, I would say, if I look at Groupon and DoorDash, and then you've worked with some people that were old, folks from eBay and kind of got back together. How
Hmm.
much of your career do you think has been shaped by your network and people that you're connected to?
Yeah, I mean, I have multiple examples where I found out about an opportunity because of someone through my network,
Okay. Yeah.
and sometimes randomly. You know, I got I was looking to move from the Silicon Valley back to the Midwest for just personal reasons, and happened to talk to someone who had just met Andrew Mason, the founder of
Right.
Groupon,
Yeah.
back right around the Series A time. And I got the connection, and I ended up joining them, kind of not knowing what I was getting into, but that was just a random thing, and it was even though Groupon itself had a lot of ups and downs, and we didn't live up to the hype in the end. Um, Personal connections That was
Yeah.
a clear example. I ended up going to DoorDash because someone that I'd worked with at Groupon became the head of product and design at DoorDash.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
there's, you know, you don't realize how much that the connections you make, not only friendships,
Right.
but also, people get to know what you're like to work with,
Right.
and
Right.
are you a good fit, that kind of thing. Now I've got random people that I haven't talked to in years. They'll see a post on LinkedIn or something like that, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I didn't realize you were coaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk to someone?" So I'm like you. I'm not. I'm not. I don't love networking. I love catching up with old friends, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
that part of it's
Exactly.
fun, and I do like helping people. That part of it's fun, and so that's part of what has made this easier for me is you can say,
Sure.
"Hey, I'm not really networking in a what's in it for me way,
Hmm.
but if I just catch up with people, good things happen." And worst
Yeah.
case, it's talking with an old friend.
Yeah. Exactly. I keep trying to explain it that way to people. It's like you're just catching up with good people. Like,
Yeah.
you'll forget how long it's been since you've talked with some folks. You're like, man, it's been
Mhm.
5 years since I've talked to you, and you just want to catch up. And I said, you don't have to force things if you're looking for something like work. There, people are always going to ask you, what are you up to? And
Yeah.
you're going to talk about what you're up to, and they're going to say, how can I help you? Yeah, a lot of us do that. I mean, I would say the tech industry, probably more than any other industry I've been in, and I've worked in other industries,
Mhm.
probably one of the best at people saying, how can I help you? Who can I
Yeah.
connect you to? Which has been, I think, a huge benefit. I think that's why the industry has been so successful is people cross pollinate and they help each
Mhm.
other and they build teams here and then they leave and go build a new team there. And eBay's been a
Yeah.
pollinator. Yahoo is a huge pollinator.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's a lot about those, like you said, the people who know each other, and it removes the variable of, do I want to work with you? Are you good at what you do? I
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
I like working with you. I know you're good at what you do, and now we just have to do it in a new building. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
here we
that's
go.
true. Well, there's the flip side of that, obviously, is if you're not a good coworker, you
Yes,
know,
exactly,
you
exactly.
then all what you described is contingent on you actually being a nice person to work with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
That's funny. Yeah.
hopefully most people want to do that anyway. But yeah, that is something that you know, good and bad reputations follow you around.
I kinda know. It's funny, I tell people, it's like, everybody pings everybody. I get pings all the time, like, "Do you know this person?"
Yeah,
"We're looking at hiring them for this VP role. What do you know about them? It looks like you're in the same company." And I'll, check with people, "Hey, do you know this person?" And if their response is, "Give me a call." I'm like, "Oh."
yeah,
They're like, "I don't wanna document how I feel about this person."
yeah, exactly. And you're like, well, probably already it's going to be a
I
deal breaker,
I
but
think I know the answer.
you should take that call anyway.
Oh my god.
Mm.
Uh, I probably should let's take a few moments and talk about what you're doing with Crescendo Product Group because you've been doing bits and pieces of this before where you're helping come in and kind of do product excellence and operational excellence and build teams and advise product organizations. And I know you've been doing that for a while. And now you have your own company that you're the founder of doing this. So let's talk a little bit more about what you guys do and how you help people.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, for a long time, it started off just like randomly people would ask for help. Like, I had full-time
Yeah.
jobs and like, hey, could you meet with so and so over coffee?
Yeah.
And I think this was your example too of getting into career coaching because people kept asking you
Yeah.
for
They
career
just kept
advice.
coming to me.
You know, you're like, hey, this is kind of interesting, and
Right.
people seem to have a need for it. Yeah, for me, a lot of times my coaching was a side thing where I'd meet with people
Mhm.
here and there just opportunistically. Um, I've really enjoyed it though. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy the chance to go in and see like lots of different kinds of companies. Intellectually, it's interesting because you're
Yeah.
trying to say, okay, these things that I've seen done or that I've implemented, what are the principles behind that should always hold? What are the things that need to flex based on this
Mm,
company?
mhm.
And then also how do you help them go from point A to point B, which the
Right.
change management part is almost always a unique path for every team, even though there's some
Sure.
commonalities.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's kind of what got me into it. What I'm doing now is mostly it falls into three categories. Although, again, it depends on what the team needs, and it's just like trying to figure out how you can help them out. Usually it's some kind of, call it fractional consulting or transformation consulting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, say transformation consulting because usually they come to you because they're looking to change some key pieces of their practice. So that that tends to be a fractional engagement. Second category is product leadership coaching.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, a lot of times being the head of product at a company is very lonely.
Yes.
And especially if you're kind of in the middle of your career, so you also feel like you're learning a lot of things and you want a second opinion or an outside perspective,
Yeah.
or you want someone to nurture your growth.
Right.
And maybe the CEO that you report to has never been in a product role, and not only are they not able to nurture your growth, but they might even have some false expectations, and you're trying to figure out how to manage up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the second category, is like product leadership coaching, and often that might be just meet with them a couple times a month, and then
Mm-hmm.
have some syncs over email or over Slack or whatever in between.
Right. Right.
And then the third thing is workshops. Sometimes a team, whether it's a kickoff meeting or they're like, hey, we want to up level people on a specific area. Can you come in
Mm-hmm.
and present that, teach it, and then do some things to help us apply those skills? So sometimes it is a general product practice that you're helping to teach them.
Sure.
I've done a boot camp with like leadership at a company. There's a PE firm that we've done a few boot camps for their portfolio companies to come in for multiple
That's
days.
cool.
It's
Yeah.
kind of a combination of teach the principles and then have breakout sessions to
Right.
apply those. I had a company that they made an acquisition, and they came to terms afterwards that they didn't have a clear strategy of how the two companies were going to fit together.
Oh, wow.
And so they had a hypothesis, but there was a lot of
Sure.
details to be
Yeah.
fleshed out, which is not uncommon.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, we got together and we went on, help them figure out, what their integration strategy is and their approach. So,
Mm.
yeah, again, usually fractional consulting, product leadership coaching, and workshops are the biggest categories, the most common.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I don't think people realize it till you get to a certain level in your career how lonely it can get.
Yeah.
And I've tried to explain it to people. It's like you get to a point in your career where, unless you're lucky and you have a great mentor as a boss, who's this,
Mm.
they're a mentor and a good boss, they kind of expect you to know your stuff. It's like, you know
Yeah.
what, you need to run your team. If you're having issues, I'm going to start to question whether you should be in that seat, and
Hmm.
that happens. As much as you might like your peers, it's like, it gets to be a little competitive as you're all jockeying for that SVP role or whatever it might be, right?
Hmm.
And so it's a little competitive, can get a little political. And then you don't go to your team when you're having issues. Like, boy, I'm just really worried about the future of the company. You're not going to say that to your team and scare them, right? So I tell people, it's like,
Yeah.
you need an outsider. I tell people you can have your inner circle of peers of like maybe 3 to 5 at the most, a small group that you could get together
Mhm.
with and mentor and guide each other through your careers. And some people have that, or you need a coach. You need somebody
Yeah.
who can say, I'm going to keep this confidential. And guess what? I care the most about you. I'm not working for the company. I'm not in HR. I care about you. And
Yeah.
so you're really trying to help them, which is a rare thing for someone to have. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And, just like a mentor conversation, like you said, a lot of times you just feel a lot safer in opening up about,
Yeah.
here's the reality and here's the stuff that I'm feeling a little bit uncertain about.
Hmm. Yeah.
And, and it could be the dynamic that you mentioned where you've got a bunch of peers and you've got a manager and you're not quite sure, can you tell them everything?
Right. Yeah.
Another common example I see is, you think about the head of product at a Series B startup. Maybe they were a director at a big company and they left.
Hmm.
Suddenly, their manager isn't a product person, and they don't have a
Right.
peer person,
Yeah.
and so that's not even an option anymore.
Right.
So they want people that they can be very honest and transparent with, without feeling like it's going to come back and affect their performance review.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
and B, it's like, who is nurturing their growth? you can learn a lot on the job, but it's helpful to put it in perspective with someone who's seen similar situations and can help you think through these problems together, et
Right.
cetera. Just like a good manager at a bigger company would provide that. At a smaller company, your manager may not be in a position to provide that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So you've been doing this in tech and product for a while.
Mm,
Many companies, many hats. How have you seen that things have changed and shifted over the years in terms of product and the industry and where things are going in it? We talked earlier a little bit about how AI is a new sea change that we're facing, obviously.
yeah.
That we Some of us are old enough to kind of remember when computers first came on the scene and well, home computers, personal computers,
Mm,
and then the internet hit. You're like, wow, okay, this is different. And then mobile, and now AI. Undeniable
mm,
that it's the next sea change.
yeah.
What are you seeing? How much change have you seen, and where do you think things are going?
Yeah. I mean, I think some positive trends. I think product overall has become much more collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's become more customer focused overall. Obviously
Okay.
there are teams that do things better and worse than others, but I think early on it was like, hey, we're smart people, so we know what the customer needs.
Yeah, right. Do what
And
I
now
told you.
there's a lot more of, like, oh, actually the customer has, very valuable information for us to understand because they're the
Right.
ones
Yeah.
that we're building for. Um, and I'd say it's a lot more data driven, whether it's just the
Hmm.
rise of data science as a practice
Sure.
or just the understanding again that you build stuff and actually a pretty big share of the time it may not meet the intended
Yeah.
hypothesis. And
Right.
so
Right.
you got to iterate on that. So I think those are all positive, I'll call them longer term trends that are still continuing because there is a big
Hmm.
gap between the companies that do those things really well and companies that are kind of stuck in, I'll just call it
Sure.
older practices or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so I think that's all positive. Yeah, obviously AI is a huge disruptor to this. Um,
Hmm.
and in some ways it's a disruptor like you talked about with like mobile where it has customer product applications.
Hmm.
And I think that's interesting. You can build AI agents that give great answers to things that maybe they don't have to contact customer support. That's one of the
Sure. Yeah.
more
Yeah.
common use cases. Um, I think the difference with AI versus the other technologies is AI is also a disruptor to how teams operate.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
the internal work. And if you think about, there's a lot of stuff that you can do much faster than before if you know how to use AI properly.
Right. Right.
And by the way, that's getting better and better at an astoundingly fast rate.
Just in the
Six
last
months
3
ago,
months, I'm
yeah,
like,
exactly. 6 months ago,
wow.
the grade you would give something versus now, it's going to be a much better grade.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's really interesting to see how that shapes the dynamic between PM, design, and engineering.
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it's a hypothesis that I kind of like, subject to being proven wrong, but that I think the biggest impact is going to be in efficiency in coding.
Yeah.
And so, whereas you might have a PM and a designer with like 6 to 8 engineers today, maybe that becomes like 5 engineers or four
Mhm.
engineers, or over time, even fewer. Um,
Right.
but the interesting thing, I think, and this is maybe me coming at it from the, practices perspective, um, there's so much focus on AI that I think people are underinvesting in these fundamentals of doing things well.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's still like if AI helps you build the wrong thing faster,
Exactly.
it's still the wrong thing.
You
Now,
still lose.
if you have a feedback loop, then you can understand that and you can iterate, and so you can go
Right.
through hypotheses faster and get to the right answer eventually, which is
Mhm.
a good part of product practices.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
if you don't have that feedback loop, you're just going to be building, 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 building,
Right.
and you're going to have a
Yeah.
lot of stuff there, some percent of it which isn't great, and it could actually make your product experience worse.
Right.
So, I
Right.
think, the challenge always is like, how do you take this new capability, new thing, and then marry it with like, hey, we can't forget about the other parts of actually picking important customer problems to solve,
Right.
and taking pieces of it and really understanding what are the key root causes of that, and launching something, but assuming that launch is an experiment, not 100% mission accomplished,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all the actions you take from that. So I think there's a lot that goes back to still being clear about what you're building and why, and then did it work, which will continue to be important. And I think that's going to be a lot harder for AI to replace.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I have read an interesting article. It's one of the key things that humans still bring to the equation working with AI is asking the right question. Because you
Yeah.
could ask the wrong question and get a great answer, but it's going to make you build the wrong solution because you asked the wrong question.
Hmm.
Customers didn't want what you asked about. It kind of reminds me of the shift that we saw with analytics when it really exploded. Because I
Hmm.
started before you had analytics, so
Yeah.
you'd shrink wrap a CD and launch it and be like, I don't know, we'll see how people use
Mhm.
it, and maybe we'll do some usability. That's the only answer we would get.
Right.
And then we had analytics. You got real time dashboards now, and so you'll see all this data. It's massive amounts of data. And so it'll be like, oh, people aren't clicking, they're dropping off. And so we
Hmm.
got to fix that. And it's like, why aren't they clicking? Why are they dropping off? And
Yeah,
like, I don't
exactly.
know, because it's not like we put up something to say, hey, why did you drop off? We don't,
Hmm.
some sites do that. But it is that qualitative insights and interpretation that I think is so critical. And the same with AI. It's like you have to ask the human questions of, well, what is going on with this? And what does a human
Hmm.
need? Why would a human do that? It doesn't understand that yet because humans are kind of unpredictable sometimes. We're
Yeah.
not rational decision makers. So it's you got to have a human in the loop, for as long as we can tell, at least maybe the rest of our careers. But
Yeah.
it's an interesting tool, definitely.
Yeah. Well, and if you're innovating, you're trying new stuff.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so AI may not have an answer for it because no one else
There's no
has
data.
an
Yeah.
answer. And
Yeah.
you and your team have to figure that out. And you have to approach it with, like clarity and structure and critical thinking skills. And,
Right. Yeah.
what is it we're trying to actually create?
Yeah. Yeah. This guy gave a great example of the iPhone and two different interpretations. One that said, this is a failure. It's a terrible phone.
Mm.
Because it's supposed to be a better phone, worst phone ever. And
Yeah.
somebody else said, I'm not trying to build a phone. We're building a computer you put in your pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a very different human vision of the future than somebody who's like, "Make a better phone." It's, you can make a better phone, but that it wasn't what people needed, and it's hard to
Yeah.
be somebody with a vision to see that. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, Kinda related to all that, there are people listening to this, a lot of folks that work in tech, product design, you name it, engineering. What advice, given this landscape, what advice would you give people to help them kind of keep their careers on track and stay ahead of the curve with all this?
Yeah. I mean, I think now more than ever, um, you just got to try different stuff and see what
Yeah,
works,
yeah,
and keep trying it because as we just talked about with AI, something that didn't perform very well a few months ago, will become better and better, and partially
mhm,
because you might understand what prompt to give it, but also
right,
partially because the upgrade to that is
yeah,
now solving
it is
something
getting better,
than
yeah,
before. Yeah, and so I think it is just having an experimental mindset and a growth mindset. Um, you
right,
know, it's just always true. You gotta keep improving your own capabilities, and especially with something like this that's so dynamic.
yeah,
I would say AI should be part of what you're investing in.
yeah,
Spend some time playing around with it.
yeah, I agree, yeah, because I wrote it off a couple years ago or last year. I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty bad," and I kinda stepped away for a while.
Yeah,
And then I reengaged in the last month, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, it's gotten so much better." It's like, I can't ignore it anymore. It's getting really good and useful, and I need to understand this if I'm gonna stay relevant with what I do. I mean, absolutely,
yeah,
no doubt about it.
yeah, exactly.
So, where can people learn more about you? Where can they
Yeah.
find you?
Okay. So, of course, I'm on LinkedIn, David Jesse, Jesse. My website is Crescendo Product Group, but we're at www.buildcrescendo.com.
Okay.
And I'm on Blue Sky, David J. Product.
Sweet. Blue sky. I love blue sky.
Well,
Fantastic.
you
Well,
know
thanks
about
for
the
being on
product
the
and be
show.
there. There's a
Yeah.
few of us there, but it's not as active as some
There's
other
a
folks.
few. Yeah, my pictures of waterfalls do way better than my talk about product and design. Yeah.
Yeah, I do like your pictures of waterfalls, so don't stop those.
We all need some of that.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
thank you. Thank you for making time to talk with me today. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, my pleasure. This was fun for me too.
Until next time, I wish you the best of luck with building the business of your dreams.